About 10,289 babies are born each day in the US. 761 of these babies are born to teen mothers. These girls don't have the opportunity to do this, and are expected to act like this. Nations such as Angola, the Congo, Ivory Coast, and Mali demonstrate a very high teen fertility rate. In these countries, about 150 per 1,000 children are born to teenage mothers. On the other hand, there are countries such as Singapore, Oman, Luxembourg, and Japan that have a very low teen fertility rate. In these countries, only about 6 babies per 1,000 are born to teen mothers. One of the common denominators that countries with a high teen fertility rate have is the fact that they are nations that have low education systems and low infrastructural developments. They are countries that are experiencing despair and have vast social conflict. These nations are ones in which every child does not have an opportunity to have a clear learning experience and does not have an opportunity to go to school every day. With this, it is evident that an increase in education in every single country will in the end have a decrease in the teen fertility rate. We have conducted a study in which we tried to find common ground between the relationship of the teen fertility rate and the years that women from the ages 15 to 44 attend school. In our study, the dependent variable was the teen fertility rate in each country. On the other hand, the independent variable was the mean years in school. From this graph, it is evident that the teen fertility rate has decreased since the 1970s. However, this correlation is also accurate that the mean years in school for women have increased as time has gone by. This makes it clear that there is something in common with the teen fertility rate and the mean years of women in school. The countries that have the purple dots are countries from sub-Saharan Africa such as Ghana, Benin, and Liberia. The teen fertility rate in this country has decreased, however, it is very volatile as there is a lot of social conflict in these countries. However, the mean years in school have increased due to an increase in global education The nations in orange are nations that are already developed, and they're not developing countries like those in sub-Saharan Africa. In this case, the teen fertility rate has been very steady and has been remained constant for the past 40 years. However, education and the mean years of women in school have increased tremendously, again due to an increase in global universal education.
Cuba is a Caribbean nation whose government in 1970 was overthrown by Fidel Castro and his communist followers. This country has ever since had very successful social programs. Like many other nations, Cuba has seen its teen fertility rate decreasing dramatically, while its mean years in school for women have increased. This is a lurking variable. Lurking variable being that Cuba's communist government puts a lot of emphasis on good educational programs for young women. The great success that is Cuba's educational program is seen in their having a 100% literacy rate for both men and women of all ages. Really, ever since Fidel Castro's overtaking of the government in the 1970s, women's rights have increased dramatically in the nation due to the communist favor for human rights. In this box plot for the mean years spent in school for girls in Cuba, we see that the minimum years spent in school were 6.2, and the maximum were 12.2. Now, the median years spent in school were 9.7 years. That means that from 1970 to 2009, the median amount of years girls spend in school in Cuba were 9.7 years. And the first quartile is 7.85 years, meaning that for the bottom 50% of the years spent in school was 7.85 was the median of that. Third quartile is 11.175. That means that for the top 50% of the amount of years spent in school for Cuban girls, 11.175 years is the median. The box in the box plot is quite thick. This means that the median years spent in school for girls in Cuba has varied a lot throughout the years. This can probably be for various reasons. The biggest one being that Cuba was constantly at war with the United States because of the Cold War during these times, meaning that the amount of money Cuba received from the Soviet Union varied a lot, which means that the quality of their education system varied as well. This is the box plot for teen fertility rate in Cuba from 1970 to 2009. Here, the median is 55.5 births for every 1,000. This means that for every 1,000 births, 55.5 approximately were from teenagers. Additionally, the minimum for teen fertility rate has been 45, and the maximum has been 140.7. This is quite a large range, and this will be explained further. Now, the first quartile is 46.75 births for every 1,000. This means that for the bottom 50%, the median has been 47.75 there. For third quartile, it's 72.2 births for every 1,000. This means in the top 50%, that is a median. The interquartile range is 25.45, meaning that the width of the box is actually quite small. This suggests that teen fertility rate has been quite consistent in Cuba, and hasn't changed by a lot. This is most likely due to the fact that for years since 1970, Cuba's education system has been very good towards women.
In this box plot, there is an outlier at 140.7 teens for every 1,000 births. This occurred in 1972 in Cuba, a period of economic hardship for the nation due to their increased dependency on the Soviet Union through the Council for Mutual Economic Assistance. This period is of economic hardship, making it a possible reason for why the teen fertility rate spiked during the 1970s. This histogram shows the frequency of children born from teenage mothers in Cuba. From the data encountered, it states in this histogram that most of the children born from teenage mothers were about from 45 to 65 per 1,000 children. Additionally, this graph shows that there were only 4 years in which the amount of children born from teenage mothers were from 65 to 85 per 1,000, and there were only 2 cases when it was from 105 to 145 per 1,000 children born from teenage mothers. This also means that the highest grouping frequency of data is from 45 to 65 per 1,000 children born from teenage mothers. The higher frequency in the lower amount of teen fertility in Cuba could be accounted due to the increase in education that was caused in the last 40 years. On the other hand, in this histogram, it demonstrates the frequency of the mean years in school for women in their reproductive age. In this case, 11.2 and 12 to 12.2 years are the highest amount frequency group in which students attended school. This means that in Cuba, more people attend for 11 to 12 years in school than they attend for 6 or 7 years in school. The high frequency from 11 to 12 years in school demonstrates the fact that Cuba is a country with very good educational implementations and supports their education system. We believe that this curved graph shows the perfect representation of the relationship between years in school for women and the teen fertility rate, as the slope is downwardly sloping and it demonstrates the inverse relationship amongst both topics. For instance, years in school is derived from the government support for education and the development of each country. Additionally, the lurking variable for teen fertility is education itself. As education increases and the mean years for women in school increases, the teen fertility is going to decrease as women are going to receive more education and it is more likely for them to wait until they have a child.